Canada has never felt more unaffordable. But good news, Justin Trudeau is passing the buck off to Pierre and the Conservatives, even though his policies with the Liberal government has been the exact reason that our house prices are skyrocketing and things are getting worse across Canada. It is so frustrating to hear that coward not take any level of responsibility for the mistakes he has made. He continues to have no accountability, and we have some major real estate updates because the real estate market is starting to see a pullback, which might help, but it's actually going to hurt, and we are going to get into that today. There was also another major update where Canada has 2 cities on the top 10 least affordable cities, impossibly unaffordable cities in the entire world. Isn't that great news for Canada? We are going to get into all of those topics today. Let's get into it.
There's a persistent struggle to find affordable housing worldwide, a severely acute problem in Canada, being showcased in a new report. 2 major Canadian cities falling under the impossibly unaffordable category. CTV's Kathy Lee is crunching the numbers on this dubious distinction.
2 Canadian cities rank high on a list for most unaffordable markets in the world to buy a home. Vancouver is 3rd, Toronto 11th.
What's the over-under on if they mention immigration at any point?
A long time coming. We haven't been building enough housing. We certainly haven't had enough government investment in affordable housing for decades, and the chickens are coming home to roost.
The Demographia report analyzes housing affordability in 94 cities in 8 countries and ranks them using a median price to income ratio. A rating under 3 means affordable, over 9 is impossibly unaffordable. Toronto and Vancouver scored over 9.
Buying a property right now, I feel like is almost out of the question for me and my partner. We just can't afford to do it.
A housing shortage is driving up the cost. The Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation says an extra 3.5 million homes need to be built to restore affordability by 2030. In April, the federal government announced billions in spending commitments to
billions in spending commitments, which is going to make things worse. They will do anything outside of cut immigration. What's happening and what is the most ironic thing is we're seeing people like that guy who was interviewed looking at leaving Canada. So we are bringing in immigrants to help with population growth and economic growth and all of these nonsense things that they tell us. And then we have Canadians leaving at record levels. That doesn't make any sense.
Address the problem, but it might be too late for some.
We have considered potentially looking at opportunities in the United States.
The report highlights housing costs outpacing income growth as the main cause of the crisis in the countries studied. In Canada, Edmonton is the cheapest market to buy a home, labeled as moderately unaffordable. Calgary is listed as seriously unaffordable. Ottawa and Montreal are severely unaffordable.
Our best scored city, the number 1 best was, it's moderately unaffordable. Not affordable, not, it's just moderately unaffordable. Okay, good.
I don't think the next 10 year of price growth is going to be like the last 10 years. But people have to be a bit more creative to get into the market. Some people that are under rent control in really good living conditions, what they're doing is actually buying an investment property as their first property so that they can get into the market. They're teaming up with their friends and families to co-buy properties and actually get in.
Nearly 90% of the cities in the study did not fall.
Yeah, I've seen that, and obviously I'm a real estate agent in London, Ontario. Reach out to me in the link below if you want to work with me or my team all the way across Canada. But I bring that up because, I've had clients who have really good living situations. Maybe they either live at home or they do live in a place that they've rented in for a very long time. And it actually made sense for them to put down the money to potentially buy a place as an investment property, because if you partner up with people and you guys can put down the 10% each instead of having to come up with the whole 20%, it at least comes you are able to get into the market, get some level of exposure to it, because nothing's being built. And there's a really good video at the end of this that I'm going to show you talking about how little we're building, because as real estate becomes more unaffordable and less stuff is being sold, less stuff's going to get built. What's going to happen?
All into the highest rank of impossibly unaffordable. However, none of them scored 3 or lower, which is a cutoff to be deemed affordable. Kathy Lee, CTV News, Calgary.
I wanted to start with that one because that sets the tone for what we get into with our little diva prime minister and the deputy prime minister, who both don't seem to understand how math works and that they've been in charge for the last 2 terms.
Citizenship for me, it's his own former Liberal Treasury Board president who calls it socialist baffle gab. In fact, the tax begins applying on the very first dollar that a small business earns. And, you know, he's been promising that raising taxes would make life fair. We find out today from the Food Banks Association of Canada that now a record-smashing 25% of Canadians live in poverty after 9 years of his taxes, his deficits, and his doubling housing costs. Why is he going ahead with the same wackonomics that caused the poverty in order to solve it?
So I go to a gym, and right across the road from that gym is a food bank. And anytime I go, see a constant flow of people going in with bags and then coming out with food. And it's just wild how often it is. I will say, this is just my personal experience. I'm not saying anything. Almost every single person looks like they're an immigrant, and they are driving suspiciously nice vehicles. That's all I'm going to say. I don't know what that means. All I know is they look like what would be an immigrant, and they're driving nice vehicles, and now going to the food banks. I don't know.
Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition talks about affordability, but he's standing against raising taxes on the wealthiest so we can give more supports to those who actually need it. He's standing against our school food program, which is going to help 400,000 kids across the country have fuller bellies as they study, and take the pressure off about $800 a year for families who are pressed with the cost of groceries. We're continuing to deliver dental care supports to seniors, and as of next week, to young people and Canadians with disabilities. We're there for Canadians. He's voting against it.
We're continuing to spend and make every problem across Canada, whether it's food affordability, housing, all of these things, much worse. Pierre wants to cut the spending. Don't you get it?
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
It has been 9 years of this Prime Minister promising trickle-down economics, that if he just takes money away from small businesses and workers, it will go from one level of government to another level of government to another level of government. It will trickle down. And now 25% of Canadians are living in poverty, something he tried to cover up, just like he covered up his own data showing $25 billion of extra costs with the carbon tax, nearly $2,000 in carbon tax cover-up for every single family. How can we trust anything he says about taxes, poverty, or money?
The Leader of the Opposition hid for 8 weeks while he was trying to come up with an answer to us, asking the wealthiest to pay their fair share so we could invest in fairness for every generation.
Wrong. We just went over it. They are not asking the wealthiest. They are asking average Canadians. What do the wealthiest have? Teams full of accountants and lawyers to avoid paying tax. What are they also going to do? Leave to avoid paying tax. What does the average Canadian have? They have potentially a house that was passed down to them, a house that they bought previously, an investment property, a cottage. Maybe they have a business. Whatever it is, they have all sorts of things where they will be paying tons of tax, and it will not be the wealthiest.
I think he needs to go back to the drawing board because his answer is completely illogical and unfounded. The reality is, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to delivering for Canadians struggling with food prices, we've got a national school food program that's going to help 400,000 kids that party is voting against, Mr. Speaker. They talk about affordability, but they're actually only interested in themselves and their political advantage.
That's the thing that the Liberals always do, which makes me so mad, is they speak as if, okay, well, this is an unavoidable problem that has always existed and we're fixing it. And then they go, and you're arguing with us trying to do a nice thing for the starving kids. And it's like, why are they starving? Why are they starving? Is it because we are pumping in immigrants at a completely unsustainable level? We are making housing so unaffordable, and then you guys keep printing money and the sovereign debt is getting worse and we're unproductive and all you do is keep increasing government roles?
Mr. Speaker, a deception was revealed last week.
It was.
The deception was the fake pose of the Conservatives to pretend to be on the side of working people. And last week we gave them a choice. We said they could be on the side of a nurse or a welder, a Canadian who lives from paycheck to paycheck, or they could side with a multimillionaire. It did not surprise anyone on this side of the House that the Conservatives yet again chose their rich lobbyist friends. Shame on them.
She was proven in the House today to not even understand how capital gains tax works. That's why I love it. Oh, what about the nurses and the welders? Oh, you mean the nurses and the welders who pay 100% of income tax? Yeah, guess what? So do the high income earners, assuming their salary just the same as these other people. They pay 100% income tax. And then you talk about the capital gains, like we were saying, the nurse is going to get smoked because she doesn't have write-offs and all these extra things, assuming she had a house that she bought. Like, let's say it's a 60-year-old nurse and she bought her house 30 years ago and she's had that house the entire time and that's her retirement. That nurse is going to get smoked with extra taxes way more than the rich person is. So she clearly does not understand that the nurses and the plumbers and the welders are getting hurt the most.
Looks like she has a PhD in wackonomics. Yeah. Facts are like common sense in this
Drop
government
it.
And not
Drop
so
the
common. This proud
wackonomics.
socialist environment minister's woke, radical, extreme agenda sent 2 million Canadians into a food bank and 1 in 4 into poverty. His government hid a secret report that proves the carbon tax scam cost Canadians an extra $30 billion. If anyone in the private sector covered up a $30 billion loss from shareholders, they'd be fired. So how the hell does this guy
you'd go to jail too, probably.
Still have a job?
Totally. That is the worst level of government incompetence ever, which is why we need to go into this next video, because people don't understand this trend in Canadian real estate. If this continues at what's happening in this video with unaffordability, lack of building, and then we end up with an extreme crash, it will be blood in the streets and Canadians will be suffering.
A new snapshot of Canada's housing market. It shows a slowdown, with sales down 5.9% in May compared to last year. Prices were also pretty flat, but some experts say the recent interest rate cut might kickstart housing sales again. CTV's Garrett Barry takes a closer look.
A so-called sleepy market seen in reports today. The Canadian Real Estate Association says sales and prices both ticked slightly down in May. The big question, is this the turning point?
People don't want to buy at the max either. They know they're at the top of the market.
This St. John's agent says June's interest rate cut will probably get things moving across the country.
It starts to make a difference in like the bigger markets like Vancouver and Toronto. It makes a huge difference.
But just how?
No, it doesn't. So, okay, first of all, I was right about to roast that guy because everything he said seemed wrong, but I don't know if they took him out of context and maybe he said something else, but 0.25% means nothing. That's like $100. So if your mortgage has gone up by $1,000, yeah, now it's only up by $900. It does not make a big difference. And he used, in Vancouver, Toronto, that makes a big difference. Their mortgages have gone up by $1,500 or $2,000. So for that to be a big difference, it's like, maybe guys, probably not. So again, don't want to roast that guy, but if we're going to call him an expert, let's give him some more time to talk because what he said was not good.
How much is up for debate?
There was some concern that if interest rates fell, we would just see house prices explode again. That doesn't seem to be the case.
Economists with the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives say that even with June's cut, prospective buyers will still face sticker shock when shopping for loans.
It's still a lot more expensive than it was 4 or 5 years ago to carry a mortgage.
Affordability is on everyone's mind. Today, a second update from the CMHC shows a slight increase in housing construction, especially in Toronto and Montreal, but not enough to fill the country's housing deficit.
So I'm a real estate agent, as I said earlier. This is not another shout out for me. This is a time to say don't listen to most or all social media realtors, because I still see people going like, rate cuts, what does that mean for you? It means that things are going to get more affordable and more buyers are going to rush right to the market. We are not seeing that. What we are seeing is the sellers who are waiting on the sidelines for the buyers to come went, nice, the cut's here, let's get listed so we can be front of the line for when the buyers show up. Where are the buyers? They're not here yet. We're not seeing the buyers, but we are seeing listings go up. When listings go up and buyers go down, that means prices have to come down. We'll see how much they do come down because, you know, if the sellers are in positions where they don't have to sell, it might not come down that much. But we will see what happens. And unless we see, because I do believe, because they're talking about sticker shock, if we see substantial cuts, I'm talking well over 1%, you know, 1.5%, 2%, then yes, buyers will potentially return to the market. But our economy is doing so poorly overall, I don't know. So we'll have to see. But with 0.25, we need to see way more of a trend.
Deficit.
There's a little bit of good news, but it was after a couple of months of weak results. But also the level remains concerning because we need drastically more housing supply. We probably need to double this level.
Newfoundland and Labrador provides a good example of the size of this country's housing challenge. The CMHC says about 60,000 units need to be built here in the next 6 years to hit affordability targets. But last month, just 61 new units were started.
We have a
61 versus 60,000. Pretty good dent, guys. Is there any way that we can potentially decrease the demand on housing without increasing the building by 100%, which would be a lot harder to do? Perhaps cutting mass immigration, which is coincidentally also breaking down the social cohesion of Canada at the same time? Maybe. But thanks so much for watching. Do buy the Axe the Tax shirts. They're in the link down below. I'm a real estate agent, as I've mentioned a couple times in this video now. But I do appreciate you guys for watching. When you watch the end, know that you rock. I think you're awesome. Have a great rest of your day.